Welcome to the Life You Love podcast. We're your hosts, Grace Lemire and Erin Convertini. This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers, for the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to. We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love. If you're listening to this podcast, we can assume that you have big goals. And one thing that we've learned as two ambitious women is that it is possible to do it all and have it all, but it's not possible to do it all at the same time. Everyone always talks about balance, but the truth is making real progress requires short, strategic periods of imbalance to truly go after what you want. So in this episode, we'll give you the framework for accomplishing more in less time to reach your goals faster.
This is one of my favorite things that you've said on the podcast. I don't remember how long ago it was, but you said something about a strategic period of imbalance. It was those exact words because they've stuck with me so much ever since, just thinking about these kind of like sprints towards growth. And like you were just saying, I think don't get me wrong. I think hustle culture has somewhat of a purpose, and I think it's gone too far in other ways. But I think that sometimes we focus so much on the opposite of like balance 100% of the time that we forget that sometimes the things we actually want require imbalance. And I think it's the strategic period part that is the differentiator here. It's not long-term constant imbalance forever and ever. It's how can I commit to a strategic period of imbalance where I know I'm going above and beyond on something specific for a certain amount of time and getting the results that I want. And I just love the idea of that.
Yeah, I actually heard that terminology on a Mel Robbins podcast, I think back in the fall, and the episode was all around like why fall is such a great time to like go after your goals, and how if you are thinking of accomplishing anything career-wise or business-wise, like this could be a great time to start. And she was talking about how, going after what you want is probably going to require a little bit of imbalance, but like you just said, it is a short period of time. You're not going to be completely focused on your career, your business, whatever it may be, and letting everything else go to the wayside forever. But if you actually want to make serious progress in one area of your life, it is going to require you to be a little imbalanced and put that first and put other things to the wayside a little bit for that shorter period of time. And when she was talking about it in terms of this little like sprint season almost, it reminded me actually of something that we used to do in my corporate job. So I've talked about on the podcast before, my last corporate job was in audit, and it was a project-based role. So I would be on a project for like 3 to 5 months, and then I'd get assigned to a new project and then go on from there. Like I was on something new every 3 to 5 months. And when I first started, the project was just kind of like, it took as long as it took. You get through it whenever you get through it, like that kind of thing. But then about a year into my role, we switched to doing these like 2-week sprints. So every 2 weeks we would set defined goals. We would have 2 weeks to accomplish it, and then we would move on to the second project objective. And I think it was like 4 to 5 sprints were all we were allowed to take per project. So it was very defined, and it was like, no, you're going to get this done in X amount of time. And we were so much more productive when we started doing it like that. So when Mel Robbins was talking about this, I was like, no, that totally makes sense, because as we're going to talk about today, when you do give yourself a defined period of time, like a 4-week sprint to whatever you're trying to accomplish, it's actually insane what you can accomplish in a 30-day, 4-week time period.
I think it reminds me of when I started freelancing, how for that period of time, I was like, work is going to be the number one focus. And I'm committing to this period of imbalance where I'm working 70 hours a week in pursuit of being able to freelance full time. And I always tell people this. I started in May. Well, I graduated college in May 2021. So I started like probably end of May, early June. And then literally did that for months until September of 2021. That was my first month I was able to freelance full time. And I think if I had done it with more balance, where I was like, okay, I'm not going to like work 70 hours a week, I'm just going to keep working 40, I think it would have taken me a lot longer to get to the result that I wanted. And in some situations it's not worth it, but in some situations it is. But I also love the idea too, because for me, I didn't know how long it was going to take in that situation. But if people listening, I feel like you probably follow me on Instagram. You've seen me do like the 1-year experiment. We've talked about it on the podcast. It's creating like a defined period of time. And I love the idea of breaking that down into something smaller, like a 4-week sprint, because I feel like my sprints have been long, my periods of imbalance. I mean, I didn't know how long it was going to be with freelancing. And then obviously with the 1-year experiment, it's 365 days, but like kind of chunking it out into 4 weeks. I think I think sometimes when people hear having a period of imbalance or where you're focusing on one thing, they think, well, if I'm the ambitious woman that wants to do it all, how am I going to manage that with everything else? And it's like, well, the point is that you're not. You're choosing to kind of put other things to the wayside for a little bit. It doesn't mean they're not priorities or that they're not going to be a part of your life at all, but you're choosing to just place greater focus and energy and attention. For example, I'm in a season of life where I'm focused a lot on business right now. I haven't framed this in like a 4 week sprint, but it's just a season right now. So there are certain things I'm not prioritizing as much. Like, I'm not reading for 2 hours before I go to bed like I used to. I'm reading for 15 minutes, or I'm not really prioritizing dating. I'm not like scrolling on dating apps or like going out of my way to meet people because that's not a priority in my life right now. Even down to the fact that I'm not grocery shopping in person. I'm paying for grocery delivery because it saves me like 2 hours every single week. And I want to put that time towards business instead. It's not to say those things are not a priority at all or that I'm like blocked off to those things entirely, but it's just that I have a focus on something else for this time because I want to generate faster results in that area.
Yeah, and I think what people get wrong about hustle culture is because I agree, like people can take hustle culture too far and you can get to a point where you like quote unquote burn out. But I do think I hear a lot of people say, like, I'm afraid to have these shorter sprint seasons, these strategic periods of imbalance because I'm afraid of burning out. So they don't even give themselves the opportunity to try. And I think what people need to remember with that is that building something from the ground up is hard. It's really hard, no matter whether you're trying to get a business off the ground, you're trying to become a content creator, you don't have a workout routine, but you're trying to like get into good shape or whatever it may be, whatever your goal is. Building something from scratch is really hard, but nurturing something is really easy. I heard this influencer, Brand Flakes. Do you know him? He's like that Philly guy. I love him.
Brand.
And he gives a lot of like content creator tips and stuff. And I remember he made a video a while ago that was like, becoming an influencer was so hard, but now that I'm an influencer, it's so easy because at that point you're just nurturing what you've already built and it takes significantly less time. And I think back to, I've told this story a million times on the podcast, but when I started to post on TikTok, I committed to 2 months of posting 3 videos a day. And back then I had no content creation skills. I didn't know what I was doing. So each video was taking me way longer than it takes me today. But that 60-day sprint period where I was strictly focusing on that, it was winter. I wasn't going out. I wasn't doing a ton on the weekends. So that was my sole focus. That took me so much time, but it allowed you to get to a point where all you have to do is nurture, and then it's really easy. And that's when you can nurture what you've already built and then focus your next sprint on something else. Because again, nurturing is easy and you can kind of do it behind the scenes.
I think sometimes, said with love, I think sometimes people expect the energy of nurturing and the level of effort of nurturing to be what building is. I'll say that again. I think people expect the energy and effort it takes to nurture something to be the same energy and effort it takes to build something. And so I think these like building periods where you know it's going to be difficult, people shy away from, or they start and then they dip out before they've even given it a chance. It's like, yeah, like if you lay down 3 bricks, you don't have a wall. Like you have to keep going. But once the wall is there, it's there, you know, and it's easier to keep the wall standing than it is to build it. But if you give up when you've put 3 bricks down and then you dip out, like, well, yeah, duh, you're not going to have a wall, you know? And I think, I don't know, I just think it's good to set your expectations. And also like a lot of the things you want to build in life, especially if you're listening to this podcast and you're interested in like entrepreneurship or, you know, things like that, it is hard. It just is. It's a lot of work, and you're probably going to have periods of time where you are just working a lot of hours or you're tired or you're not the most motivated and whatever. And obviously don't burn yourself into the ground to where like, you know, you are super burnt out and you're developing health issues as a result and you're anxious and you're tired and what, like, you know, fine, right? Have some level of like self-care for sure. But I do think that it does just take a significant amount of effort. But I think the flip side of that is instead of like, I think it's good to frame this or have the mindset of imagine what could happen if I did go ham for 30 days. Imagine what could happen if I was in build mode for 30 days. Imagine what would happen if I really made this my focus and I focused on just executing and taking action for just 30 days, just 30. you know what? And fine, if I get to the end of 30 days and nothing has happened, there's not a single result, nothing's happened, I'm still not having a good time, I don't like it, whatever, fine, then you can stop, whatever. But if you're not even giving it that shot, like, and then when you start to really think about too, like imagine all of the things that would happen if you invested in it, you know, you spent the 30 days. There's actually a lot, like, things can completely change in the span of 30 days. You know, you could go from 0 followers on your page to 10,000 followers on your page. You could go from no freelance clients to having 3 freelance clients. You could go from single to in a relationship. You could go from having a ton of limiting beliefs to having, you know, being able to work through those limiting beliefs. Like there's so many different ways your life could change if you just prioritize something for just 30 days.
Yeah, I saw that in a TikTok video a couple of weeks ago, and that kind of like spurred the concept that we're talking about in today's episode. And the girl was saying, like, imagine what you could accomplish if you completely dialed in for 30 days. Like 30 days, you're not watching TV for a couple hours after work. On the weekends, you're waking up and spending a couple hours on a Saturday working toward whatever goal you have. Like, imagine what you could actually accomplish if just for 30 days that was your sole focus. And I think the focus aspect is so important because I know for me, it's not even the amount of time that I'm physically sitting in front of my computer. It's just where my mental energy is going. So I feel like, and we're going to go into kind of like the different weeks and some things to focus on, like weeks 1 through 4 and all of that. But I think when you're choosing the goal, choosing the thing that you physically want to work on for 30 days, I think it's important to get super granular. Like it's not enough to just say, okay, for the next 4 weeks, career is going to be my focus, or starting that business is going to be my focus. It's time to get super, super granular on what you're actually going to focus on, what small aspect. For example, you want to be a content creator. It's not enough to just say, I'm going to become a content creator in the next 4 weeks. No, it's going to be, okay, for the next 30 days, my Instagram is my highest priority. And that means that I am like posting on my stories every day. I am posting reels every day. I'm engaging with my Instagram audience every day. It's not that for the next 4 weeks, you're going to post on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, work on your Amazon commissions, work on like all of these different things, because there's a bunch of different things that you can do in the realm of content creation. But I think it's important to get super granular because, again, your mental energy can only be pulled in one direction. Like when you're in the shower, when you're driving your car, when you're walking on the treadmill and your mind is like focused on something, that's when you get all of your best ideas. That's where all of your creativity comes. And if you are trying to have goals in like 3 or 4 different aspects, your mental energy can't be pulled in multiple directions.
Even just a little like a little neuroscience note, which I think we definitely have talked about it in a podcast episode before, but I'm trying to remember which one so I can plug it here for people to go back and listen to. So if you know, let me know. Just like a neuroscience note on this is we have if you like look around the room or the space that you're in right now, there's so many things that are going on around you and your brain can't possibly absorb all of that stimuli at the same time. So we have something in our brain called the reticular activating system, which filters our surroundings so that we pay attention to certain things. So like if I told you, look around your room, take, 30 seconds and try to identify as many white items as possible, like count all the white items. And then you look around your room and you're picking out all the white items. And then I tell you, okay, now come back, close your eyes, and I want you to try to recall all of the blue items that were around you, or all of the brown items or black items, or any other color item. You're not going to be able to identify nearly as many as you were white items because I told you to look at white items. So then your brain was told white items are important. You look around the room, that reticular activating system in your brain is filtering all the stimuli that it's absorbing to pay attention to what you were just told is important to your brain. So when you're picking a focus area, you're basically doing the same thing. You're saying, this is important to me at this time. You're telling your brain, this is important to me. And your brain is literally, it's insane. Your brain is going to filter your surroundings based on that because you just said it's important to you. So it's like the example of if you've ever said, oh, I want to go on vacation somewhere. And then you start to go out and about, and now it seems like everybody's going on vacation there, and you're like, what the heck? Why is everybody going to Cabo? And when I said I want to go to Cabo, or you say, okay, I want to buy this type of car, and then all of a sudden you start seeing that car everywhere. It's not that everyone decided to buy the car or go on that vacation because you said you wanted to. It's because you told your brain that that was important to you. So if you pick the focus area, for example, of or if your overarching goal is related to, let's say, growing your social media, you're probably going to be, and you say, okay, that's important to me, you're probably going to be a lot more open into opportunities in social media, you're probably going to notice opportunities that were there all along that you just didn't even see before because your brain was filtering it out. You might end up connecting with people more because you're just, again, noticing that more. You might see possibilities more. You might find that, you see something that would normally make you feel a sense of comparison or defeated, but because it's important to you and you've said that, your brain is now perceiving it in a different way as, you know what, someone else is doing what I want to do. That's an opportunity for me. So it really does, like on a neuroscience level, it changes how you see things and what you focus on, which also helps you get to where you want to go faster, because the way that your brain works, being obsessed with something and focusing on one thing at a time actually is better for your success.
That's such a good point. And I also think that's why it's super important when you are in this phase of like, okay, deciding on what I'm going to focus on for the next 4 weeks. I think it's really important to limit your consumption and not cloud your brain with a million different things that a million other people are doing. For example, let's say you are growing your social media platform and you think that next month you want your goal to be to build and launch your digital product. Let's say a template, right? But you're scrolling on social media and you're seeing one person making a bunch of money on TikTok Shop, or you're seeing another creator launching a newsletter, or you're seeing another creator just got a really big brand deal on their podcast or something. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, oh shoot, like this person just made a bunch of money as a LinkedIn creator, and this person just made like there's a million things that you could be doing like at the same time, right? But as we're saying, it's not going to be a good use of your time if you're paying attention to what everybody else is doing and then trying to apply that to your own situation, because like you're going to have this diluted focus and then you're not going to be able to actually dial in on the one thing that you need to do to move the needle in the next 4 weeks.
I completely agree. I think we should move into breaking this down. We broke this onto like a 4-week framework for you. If you're the type of person who really wants structure, you're like, okay, where do I actually start with this? And so week 0, so what we called it, is your like life assessment and goal setting. I preach this so much of doing a life audit or checking in with where you are in some way. You don't have to do like a formal life audit, but just where even are you? Like, because I always use the analogy of, let's say your friend is like, oh, let's go to dinner tonight. And then they give you the name of the restaurant. You go plug it in your GPS. The very first thing the GPS does after when you get the directions is it figures out where you are. So if it didn't know where you are, how the heck is it going to get you to where you want to go? And I think we have to treat it the same way when we're thinking about our goals, because I think otherwise sometimes we say, okay, this is my goal. I'm just going to start taking all of these actions without realizing, okay, here I am. These are actually the actions that would get me to where I want to be. I think it just allows you to be a lot more strategic. So like thinking through, where am I? And if you need to do a vision meditation too, to help figure out where exactly you want to go, I always recommend that to people too. I love a good vision meditation. It basically is just a guided meditation. If you've never done one before, it's just a guided meditation that walks you through, like it will kind of prompt you and be like thinking through like your dream day or your dream life or what does your career look like. And so it kind of helps you find visuals of what your day might look like or what your life might look like. And that'll give you a better idea too of, okay, I can see this vision that I want, and then I'm assessing where I am. Okay, that gives me a better idea of maybe where I need to focus. Like maybe in that vision, my career looked completely different than it does now, or maybe my relationships or my health or whatever. Or in that vision, yeah, I was like super fit and I was, I was just really strong, and I don't feel that way now. Or I was really doing a great job at cooking at home and eating at home, and I'm not doing a great job of that right now, and I want that to be my focus, or whatever it might be. It will help you kind of identify what the gaps are, which can help you figure out what you want to work on.
Yeah, I love that. We did the life audit episode. What was that? Maybe like 1 or 2 months ago, and that was a really good episode. So if you haven't listened to that, definitely go back and do that. I'm not much of like a meditation girl, but I do love the dream day, or like I call it the ideal day exercise, and I always journal about it. So I have journal prompts in my Notion planner about my ideal day, and it just helps you get some idea about, like you said, like where you are now, where you want to go, and then that gap. I think that most people know where they want to go, and they're just kind of like afraid to admit it, because they know once they admit it, they actually have to take action on it. And I think a lot of this can be, we talked about this in our action episode, like 3 ways to take more actions. You can go back to listen to that episode as well. But I think, yeah, again, you know what you want, but you're afraid to admit it because then you actually have to go out and get it. But I think it can also look like you think you know what you want, but you're not necessarily sure which path you should take in order to get there. Like, let's say, for example, before I started my social media, I actually started a blog because I wanted to do something creative and I didn't necessarily know like which avenue. There's a million different things you can do. You can go on YouTube, you can go on TikTok, you can start a blog, you can go on Pinterest. Like, there are a lot of different things that you can do in this content creation space. And I didn't necessarily know the path, but the only way that you're going to know the path is if you start taking action on something. So if I sat there and I said, well, I don't know necessarily if I want to have a blog or go on TikTok, and I just sat there and thought about it, I would still be sitting there and thinking about it because you don't know until you take action. So I also think the benefit of doing these kind of like short sprint seasons and like giving something your all for a short period of time, even if that's not the thing that you end up sticking with, it's going to give you a lot of clarity on what you like and what you don't like, and you're still going to learn a lot of things in the process.
There's this quote that I love. I don't remember where it comes from, but it says, action creates clarity faster than thinking ever will. And that, as a chronic overthinker, that is something that I was like, wow, okay, just taking an action is going to get me clarity faster than me sitting and thinking about it is ever going to get me. So I agree. I think a lot of things in life, you just have to, because I posted a question sticker on my story a few weeks ago, and we were asking like, if you could pick Erin and I's brain on anything, what would it be? Because we're working on building this private community, and I was curious what people would say. And so many people said where to start. Like, I don't know what to do to start. And I think I totally hear you, because it is like, yeah, what should the first step be? But I think that so many things in life, you just have to stop focusing on picking the right first step and focus on picking a right step or a first step, and just going. There is no like right first step. I feel like you kind of just have to like, I don't know. I hate to say pull yourself up by the bootstraps, but you know what I mean? I'm just like, you have to just execute. Just do something. Stop doing nothing and just do something. And then that something will lead you to more of the right actions. That's just how a lot of things in life have to be honest.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the harsh truth is that a lot of things you want in life, you're never going to have that kick in the butt. You have to give yourself the kick in the butt to do so. Like for example, again, we're just using our own examples in these, but when I started my TikTok channel, I started it in January of 2022 on a random weekday or whatever. No one told me, hey, you need to start posting today. Like, you have to give yourself that kick in the butt to just be like, there's never going to be a better day to do it. I'm never going to know more than I know right now until I start executing and getting that feedback. So you have to just do it today. So that brings us into our weeks 1 through 4, which is where you're actually going to execute on this little 4-week sprint in whatever you want to do, whether it be in your career, you want to learn a new skill. In your business, you want to start posting, launch a product, get one client, whatever it may be. It could even be your fitness goals or your weekly habits around your apartment, whatever it may be. From weeks 1 through 4, this is where you're going to execute. And we set in here to take an hour to just kind of like brainstorm your actions that you're going to take. And I would say give yourself a 1-hour block and don't take more than 1 hour, because I think you can get into this like trap of sitting there and like planning out your every move for 30 days. And planning makes you feel busy. So you want to stay in planning mode, but you need to switch from planning mode to execution mode for 4 weeks. So give yourself some action items, dedicate to what you're going to do for the next 30 days, and literally just spend all of your time executing.
I like added this in here of taking an hour. I think an hour is very generous. I don't even think you need an hour. But the reason I say to brainstorm a list of all of like the potential actions you can take is because I think when people get into that like action paralysis where they're like, oh gosh, okay, I don't know where to start. What can I do? So it's like brainstorm everything that could possibly get you from where you are to where you want to be, and get granular with it. Like, for example, if your goal is to start freelancing, or let's say you've kind of started but you haven't really gotten anywhere, and you're like, I want to land my first client. Maybe like one of your actions is to reach out to all of your past employers and say, hey, I'm now offering the services that I offered at my full-time job on a freelance basis. Are you looking for a freelancer? Reach out to people in your network, reach out to your aunts, uncles, whatever. Like, it could be all like that's a very specific tactical thing you can do. But let's say if you weren't sitting there really brainstorming and you're just like, I'm just going to start taking action, your first thought might be, well, I need a portfolio and I need a website and I need to do this and and you're like, okay, wait a second. What are like the actual levers I can pull to get me to that specific goal of landing one freelance client? And I think sometimes when you take a second to sit down and really brainstorm all the possibilities, you realize there's a lot more that you could be doing. And sometimes you end up realizing that the things that you could be doing that are actually going to move the needle are a lot lower lift than you might think. Because again, building a website would take you probably the whole damn 30 days. You know what I mean? So it's like, but is that really going to generate any sort of result? Or would sending an email to someone that you've worked with in the past and saying, do you happen to know anybody or whatever, and dipping into your network, that might actually move the needle. And it's far easier to do. And it's way easier to execute on.
Totally. And this is a little bit of a pro tip, but AI is the best project manager literally ever. This is probably one of my favorite ways to use AI. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll like record voice memos, just kind of talking through like my goals and what I'm trying to accomplish and like the end result. And then I upload that into AI. You don't have to do the voice memo. You can definitely like type it out in text, but I like to give a lot of context and then give it your timeline and say, what do you need from me in order to give me these actions that I can do over the next 30 days? So it'll probably come back and say, okay, I need to know your starting point. I need to know where you're at. I need to know like X, Y, and Z about your goal. It's going to have all of the information needed to be like, okay, over the next 30 days, week 1, you're going to do X, Y, and Z every day. Week 2, you're going to do A, B, and C every day. Like it's going to give you such a granular outline. I've done this so many different times between like a 1-month sprint, a 6-month sprint to launch a product. Like that's a really good tip.
Mm-hmm. I love AI. I do. I'm sorry. I love Claude. I think it's good. I also think too, when you're doing these sprints, the way that I view it is as an experiment. And I think that frame of mind is a really good perspective to have, because it's easy to get attached to the outcome. I think it's good to have a very granular goal, right? However, I think for some people, it's especially if you haven't really challenged yourself to something like this before, it's easy to fall into the trap of viewing it as black and white. I have a goal to get one freelance client by the end of this month. If I don't do it, well, I failed. And I think that then that's really demoralizing. It's like, why the heck would I want to try this again? Why would I want to do it again? But if you treat it like an experiment and you say, my goal is to get one, but if I go all in for a month, I wonder what I could do. I wonder show me world, show me what is possible. You know what I mean? If I go all in for 30 days. And I think that like experiment mindset to me is way more motivating, because I know at the end of it, even if maybe I didn't accomplish, like let's say you didn't get one freelance goal or one freelance client, did you make progress toward that goal? I bet you learned a heck of a lot of stuff. You challenged yourself to something. You learned how to be more disciplined. You're making progress still. Or if you say launch a digital product in 30 days, and let's say, you're working with someone to help you build that product, or you get into it and you're like, you know what, I actually want to build out this feature of the product a little bit more. If the timeline doesn't pan out exactly as you planned, it does not mean that you failed. It's wow, what could happen in 4 weeks if I dedicate it? And I think that is a good, like, if you're like, something about this makes me feel icky, just treat it as an experiment and say, what could happen if I dedicate 4 weeks to this?
I totally agree with that, because again, using the example of when I started my TikTok account, like I said, 3 videos a day for 60 days. My goal wasn't a defined number of like followers or money or whatever it may be. I had no idea what would happen in 60 days, but it was an experiment. I was like, we're just going to see, like, if at the end of these 60 days, I hate making TikToks and I still have 0 followers and it's a complete waste of my time, then I'll allow myself to stop. But giving yourself that defined period and just saying, let's see what can happen, I think can be more beneficial, because if I would have went into those 60 days saying, okay, you know what, my goal at the end of those 60 days is to have 10,000 followers, then I probably wouldn't have posted 3 videos a day. But starting with the action instead of the goal, I think could be super beneficial. So that's a really good point.
Yeah. And the point isn't always, how I say this, the point isn't always the goal. The point isn't always the number. For example, if your goal was to hit 10,000 followers, I think you said in another episode, you said you hit like 50 or something. in those 60 days. So, or 50,000. So then if your goal is to hit 10K, I feel like you're more likely to say, well, now I can let up on the gas instead of continuing this experiment and seeing what actually happens if I keep executing and doing all these things. Or if you say, okay, well, my goal is to make, or let's say make $5,000 in 1 month, and you're halfway through and you've made 1,000, you might say, well, I'm not on track, so forget it, I'm done. Well, who knows what would happen if you continued it? You didn't even give the experiment a full shot. And you think about all the way that I view it with experiments, I think about science class, right? And it's like, if you stop the experiment halfway, you have no idea what the result actually is. You don't actually have an accurate assessment. It's like if you try a new recipe, but you only bake it halfway. Well, yeah, the cake's gonna suck, girl, if you took it out the oven halfway through, like, duh. And you would never know what the finished cake tastes like because you took it out the damn oven halfway. And that's how I view a lot of these personal growth experiments, where it's like, you have no idea what the result would actually be because you stopped halfway or you didn't actually execute on the whole experiment. But if you do, it's like when people do 75 hard. They commit to it, they get through 75 days, and at the end, they're like, wow, okay, maybe the goal was never to lose a certain amount of weight or build I want to have this percentage of body fat or muscle or whatever, or the challenge. 75 hard is about discipline. And as a byproduct, a lot of people end up more disciplined. They might end up more fit, more strong. They might read some cool books. They drank a lot of water. Maybe that cleared their skin. Like, there are byproducts that come with it, but it's a discipline experiment. That's why the guy created it. So treat whatever your personal growth sprint is as a sprint, an experiment. Let me see what will happen. And then let the results, the numbers, be the byproduct that come from you simply showing up for yourself and what you want for 30 days without being so tied to that number of the goal.
No, definitely. Definitely make this sprint a lot more action focused than goal focused. I totally agree with that. And that brings us to the last week, which is kind of like a little bonus week, week 5, which would just be to reflect and refine. I feel like a lot of people forget about this, but it is actually so important not to just like sit back and say like, oh, okay, like that was good, I'm going to keep going, or I'm going to pivot a little bit, but keep going. Like, really get granular on what worked, what didn't, what were all of the actions that I took over the last 4 weeks, and why did certain things work and why did certain things not work. So for example, we're going to use the social media example again. Like, if you posted every single day for 30 days and at the end you're like, okay, like I made some traction, like I'm going to keep doing that, but you didn't take time to like actually go into your analytics, actually look at, okay, these 3 videos performed way better than all of my other videos. Why is that? How can I make more videos that are going to be more like these videos that did perform well? Then going into your next sprint, which can be around a similar topic, it can be on something totally different. It's going to be a lot harder to gauge your progress and also make more aligned actions moving forward.
I also think this goes back to what you were saying before about how people know what they want, but they don't necessarily know the path that they want to go down. And as you start to execute, it might naturally pull you down one path over the other. And you're like, okay, for example, using the freelancing example, if you want to get one client by the end of the month, it's like, okay, maybe I found that emailing people that I've worked in the past worked really well. So you know what? I don't give a freak about posting on LinkedIn right now. Or maybe you found that you committed to, okay, I'm going to post on LinkedIn 3 times a week and connect with 2 different people a week that I would want to potentially work with. Let's say that ends up working. Okay, great. Well, now I know that I'm going to double down on that in my next sprint. And I don't have to worry about the other path of having a website and trying to get organic traffic to my website. Like, I think executing will give you hints as to what is working or signs as to what's working and what's not. And then when you go to do that sprint, the next one, you're not worried about which path to take. You're just doubling down on the path that you're now on that has worked.
Yeah, totally agree. And now we're at 35 minutes for this episode. And we said this was going to be super short and just like give you 20 minutes of like, go get stuff done and go after it. But we always yap longer than we think that we're going to. So we're going to cut it here. And this is going to be the end of today's episode. We clearly love topics like this. So let us know if you like our more kind of like action focused, like execution style podcast episodes, and what else you would want to hear about in regard to these kinds of topics, because we love these types of episodes so much. So leave us your feedback, questions, comments in Spotify, or you can DM us on Instagram at the Life You Love Pod. We love to hear from you guys. But thanks for tuning into the podcast, and until next week.